earthquakes of unprecedented magnitude will destroy our metropolises. New mountains will rise right in the middle of the skyscrapers. In the remains of the ravaged neighborhoods will be swallowed up by a mega-glacier. But the dead silence won't last long. Soon a comet will appear in the sky and turn the remnants of civilization into lava and ash. Our planet has cycles of catastrophic events that sometimes stretch for millions of years, and therefore they're very difficult to notice. Each of these cycles could put humankind on the brink of extinction. But if they coincide, we're definitely screwed. One of the most destructive terrestrial cycles lies dormant right under our feet, but it's only a matter of time. In late 16th century, a Flemish cartographer, Abraham Ortelius, created the first effort world atlas and the last one. It was believed that Earth was only a few thousand years old, and then it was and would remain. Ortelius noted that the coastlines of the continents looked as if the Americas were torn away from Europe and Africa by earthquakes and floods apparently. He imagined the tremendous biblical catastrophe, like the Great Flood, but he couldn't even anticipate that something similar could happen again. Over 300 years later, a German geologist turned Ortelius' idea into the continental drift theory. All of the world's land masses were joined together as the supercontinent Pangaea. But the very rotation of Earth, living in the pieces that moved away from one another. According to Wagner, for all the planet's inhabitants, but Wagner's sensational theory also suggested that, in the future, would bring the continents back together. And then the west coast of Africa would crash right into the east coast of the US. In the place where you bought bagels in Times Square. And according to Wagner's initial calculations, this catastrophic cycle should be over in 2 million years. That right now, the continents are moving at a speed of 2 meters per year, and that would mean the Statue of Liberty, the movement of the continental shelf. Fortunately, satellite data showed that the continents are actually moving 100 times slower. At this rate, the continents will reunite into Pangaea not sooner than in over 200 million years. From the disintegration of the old supercontinent into separate continents to the formation of a new supercontinent takes from 400 to 450 million years. Moreover, this cycle is controlled not by Earth's rotation, but by convection. Currents of hot, liquid magma in the planet's balls. This incredible natural force lifts and pushes together massive little sphere plates in Earth's crust. However, geologic evidence indicates the cycle of supercontinents could have been entirely different, from 800 million to 1 billion years. But scientists have no idea why, or what could have accelerated it so much. On the scale of human history, deep tectonic forces occasionally break through the surface as volcanic eruptions, but explosive cataclysms, like the destruction of Pompeii by Vesuvius, usually don't recur, even after millions of years, unlike other devastating disasters that are just waiting for their time. In 1906, powerful tremors almost completely destroyed San Francisco, killing up to 3,000 people. Half a century later, the earthquake occurred again, but the city was lucky that the earthquake's epicenter was in the ocean. 30 years later, the disaster hit California again. It's just that the San Andreas Fault has one of the shortest earthquake cycles on the planet. In California, the Pacific Plate presses against the North American Plate so much that Earth has to relieve. The enormous pressure, once every 32 years. The latest of these cyclical earthquakes occurred in 2004, so Californians should get ready for potentially apocalyptic cataclysm in the next 20 years. Faults around the world have similar cycles of seismic activity, but we have such a poor understanding of the processes in Earth's interior that we're still unable to accurately predict. Strong tremors, especially since sometimes earthquakes happen suddenly and don't fit into any cycles. Some scientists suggest that the electromagnetic influence of the sun can sometimes be so tremendous that it seems to charge Earth, mantle from the inside, and the release of charge causes sudden earthquakes. And that's only part of what our luminary can do. The sun has its own mysterious cycle of the apocalypse, and we're still trying to figure it out. In 1826, amateur German astronomer Heinrich Schwab decided by all means to find the mythical planet Vulcan between Mercury and the sun. He had to catch the moment when the celestial body would slip right in front of the solar disk. To avoid confusing it with a sunspot swamp, began to sketch those spots almost every day, and he persevered. Didn't find the planet Vulcan, but he discovered that the number of sunspots grows and decreases approximately every 10 years. This discovery shocked the Swiss astronomer Rudolf Wolf. He immediately realized that variations in the solar activity must have global consequences for life on Earth. With maniacal persistence, Wolf collected all the observational data for centuries and estimated that solar cycles actually last about 11 years. But in the mid-19th century, neither Wolf nor other scientists could unravel the true significance of the spots. Therefore, they did not expect that catastrophic event exactly one cycle later, on the morning of September 1, 1859. The British astronomer Richard Carrington pointed his telescope at the sun as usual. Other two unseen giant spots appear before his eyes, and each of those spots was many times larger than the Earth. Suddenly, they spewed an immense, massive, bright plasma, just like volcanoes. If our planet was nearby, it would instantly be incinerated. But even despite the enormous distance, by the evening of the same day, terrestrials felt the shockwave from the sun. The northern lights lit up the sky from Canada to the Gulf of Mexico. While attempting to transmit the news about this, telegraph operators and analog of the internet at the time received strong electrical shocks and even burns. That horrible solar storm that literally pummeled Earth's magnetic field was called the Carrington event. And that was just the beginning. In 1921, a solar storm shut down phones around the world. In 1972, a geomagnetic storm detonated U.S. Navy mines off the coast of Vietnam. In 1989, it blacked out the Canadian province of Quebec. In 2012, the Carrington event, in fact, got repeated, but Earth miraculously dodged the plasma ejection at the last moment. The next time a hurricane of charged particles reaches its target, our cities will instantly plunge into darkness. Well, all the planes will fall in our heads from above, and we won't even be able to share those creepy pictures on social media, because all the working gadgets will burn out, and the internet will just cease to exist. Humanity will literally be thrown back into the 19th century, and the main question is not whether it'll happen, but when it'll happen. Scientists have already realized that, in addition to the 11-year cycles, there are centuries-long cycles of solar minimums and maximums, but no one can say with certainty what controls them, and most importantly, where we are on the solar apocalypse chart. But those are only theories, and in practice, we know too little about the sun's internal mechanisms, not to mention the space forces that influence it from the outside. All we know now is that the 25th solar cycle began in 2019. It's entirely possible that the new Carrington event will occur around 2030, or maybe we'll have to wait for it until the 2060s. But one thing is clear: the apocalyptic solar flare will almost certainly occur in the next 150 years. However paradoxical it is, The sun can not only fry civilization but also do quite the opposite. After all, the sun makes Earth revolve around it, not in a perfect circle and not at a constant speed. Her orbit slightly elongates and shrinks about once every 100,000 years. That's the eccentricity cycle. The angle of Earth axial tilt also oscillates reciprocally with a 41,000-year cycle. Finally, the axis itself has the precession cycle and traces out a circle every 23,000 years. And well, these cycles coincide in just a certain way, and anomalously small amount of sunlight reaches Earth. Starting an ice age, just imagine a mega glacier swallowing up a city like Chicago or London and turning it into a lifeless Arctic desert for a few thousand years. Millions of people will freeze to death, and the survivors will have to be evacuated to south. Such an ice apocalypse caused by the sun occurs every 41,000 years. This cycle was discovered by Serbian geophysicist Milutin Milankovic 100 years ago, and therefore bears his name. However, judging by geologists' findings, ice ages are sometimes stretched out over a longer period. In the usual Milankovic cycle is extended 100,000 years, and scientists still can't figure out what exactly leads to this inconsistency. Based on the current schedule, the next global glaciation will hit Earth in 10,000 years. But it looks like the ice apocalypse is all the greenhouse gases that humanity has emitted into the atmosphere in the last couple of centuries. But is it possible that in 10,000 years, instead of an ice age, we'll face a human-made nuclear winter? 1 year ago, in one of my videos, I predicted a new stage in human history, and even though you were skeptical about that in the comments, right now my prediction is coming true. But I'll tell you about it a bit later. The main discovery is that sometimes completely unexpected factors intervene in the cyclical course of events, and on closer inspection, it becomes clear that they're also subject to their own catastrophic clock. Life on Earth has hidden patterns which can be especially challenging for us to find and understand. In the late 18th century, a French naturalist, Georges Cuvier, stated that the elephant bones he found in Europe actually belonged to mammoth. Back then, it became a sensation because biological species had disappeared on Earth, much less some new ones had appeared. What's incredible is that Cuvier claimed that mammoths were wiped. Terrible catastrophe. In his view, Earth was pummeled by superstorms with great floods once every few thousand years, so that all life on the planet was renewed. Other scholars disparaged Cuvier's theory as catastrophism and mocked that. British professor Charles Darwin was also among the skeptics, but he only partially disagreed with Cuvier. In his opinion, the species on Earth indeed replaced one another, but as a result of natural evolution, not catastrophes. Darwin's theory was eventually confirmed, and we now know that the average lifespan of a species varies from 5 to 10 million years. Mammoths conquered the northernmost regions of Earth 5 million years ago. They bred so much that they became one of the dominant species, but about 200,000 years ago, these giants began to give way to a new, aggressive predatory species. Those predators were Neanderthals, but 40,000 years ago, they were also edged out by perhaps the most successful species in modern history. First, they exterminated Neanderthals, and 5,000 years ago, they wiped out all the mammoths, and those were, of course, smart and daring Homo sapiens. Today, we know that the first ancestors of modern humans appeared about 2 million years ago, and since we have no reasonable competitors for species has at least half of life ahead of us, and given that we've taken over almost the entire Earth and have driven the most dangerous predators to extinction, from an evolutionary point of view, Homo sapiens can become an almost eternal species, and perhaps it would have been like that if Georges Cuvier, with his catastrophism, hadn't proved right. In 2021, a group of American scientists published an incredible discovery in the Geoscience Frontiers journal. As it turns out, all global Extinctions on Earth in recent eras are subject to a previous, the unknown, cycle of 27.5 million years. It looks like Earth has a pulse, and with each beat, many species disappear from its face. At one cent, honest of all, the catastrophes are entirely different every time. One pulse beat corresponds to the floods due to changes in ocean levels mentioned by Cuvier. Another one causes glaciation, which makes thermophilic species freeze to death. The third one leads to a supervolcano eruption. Scientists believe that about 70,000 years ago, a powerful eruption of the Toba supervolcano pushed humanity to the brink of extinction. According to one of the theories, out of all our ancestors, literally a few thousand people survived, and that horrible, catastrophic event was not part of our mysterious pulse, which is even more destructive. Now we have another 20 million years before the next pulse. It seems that there's plenty of time to get ready, but if we don't figure out what mysterious force Earth pulse, we'll just waste our time now. Scientists are at a loss trying to determine what mechanism can cause floods, glaciations, earthquakes, and other cyclical disasters. It looks like we need to look for something more global than continental drift changes in Earth orbit and even the sun's vagaries. And in the well-known mass extinction chart, there's one event that stands out from the rest and may finally lead us to a solution. I think you've already guessed. The asteroid impact that wiped out the dinosaurs also matches one of Earth's pulse beats. But how is that even possible? After all, our planet can't bombard itself with asteroids. Such space disasters must in theory be random and not subject to any cycles, but in our incredibly vast and complex universe, nothing seems impossible. The most mysterious, catastrophic cycle is much more large-scale than you can imagine. Since the late 70s, when geologists Walter and Luis Alvarez discovered the Chicxulub crater formed on Earth as a result of a giant asteroid impact in the Gulf of Mexico, hundreds of scientists have been puzzling over the question, when will Earth be subjected to another apocalyptic bombardment? To unveil the cycle of killer asteroids, we need to determine the dates of all the previous impacts, but even after just a few thousand years, finding evidence of such a catastrophe can be incredibly difficult, even if it was seen by people. The ancient city of Tal el Hammam, Jordan, suddenly became deserted around 1650 BC. Archaeologists have developed various theories, and only recently they discovered melted stones, burnt household items in the 1.5 meter ash layer, and since there are no volcanoes nearby, the only possible explanation is a small Commodore asteroid that instantly incinerated all the inhabitants and their dwellings. In addition, this object didn't fall to the ground, it exploded above her surface, leaving no crater. Just like the Chelyabinsk meteor in 2013, the most visible trace of this object is recorded in the biblical story of the annihilation of Sodom and Gomorrah in the fires of hell. But a really large asteroid that could destroy all humanity would definitely leave a crater, right? Alas, erosion and other natural processes on Earth can perfectly cover the traces of even powerful impact. After decades of research, scientists can confidently name only a dozen major space disasters over the past 2 billion years. It doesn't look like a cycle, so the best estimate astronomers can make today is one apocalyptic impact every 4 or 40 million years. That is, in practice, if just impossible to predict the next one, and that's why NASA spent 20 years and enormous resources to detect all potentially dangerous near-Earth asteroids. As of today, scientists have found more than 90% of all potentially hazardous objects between the Sun and the asteroid belt, and according to this data, we're safe for at least another century, if not a millennium, and we could just leave it at that. But only objects found by NASA are just a drop in the vast ocean of space killers. This is the ORC cloud, located 2 light-years away from the Sun. It's a gigantic bubble of comets, almost invisible to us in one Recent discovery points to a mysterious cycle that keeps sending these killers towards Earth. In August 2022, a team of researchers at Curtin University in Australia studied ancient tectonic plates in their country and in North America. And despite the enormous distance between them, the researchers saw the same pattern judging by the nature of crystalline deposits. Approximately 3.5 billion years ago, a massive comet crashed into the Earth, and the impact was so strong that it punched through the Earth's crust down into the mantle, turning much of the ocean planet into a molten lava. World scientists calculated that the speed of the killer comet had to reach 60 to 70 kilometers per second, which is 3 times faster than the speed of the dinosaur-killing asteroid. The difference between these objects is like that between a crop duster and a jetliner. Such tremendous speed is clear evidence that the comet came not from the inner solar system, but from the Oort cloud. But the strangest thing is that this terrible global catastrophe was far from unique. Having studied all the available geological layers, scientists discovered that similar lava apocalypses, with rare exceptions, occurred at intervals of about 170 to 200 million years. But no long cycle that would send killer comets to Earth so regularly exists in our solar system. However, it exists far beyond it. And this is not fiction. Right now, the solar system, along with all the planets and comets, is rushing through the Milky Way galaxy at a speed of 240-1 per second, and it takes us about 225 million years to make a full rotation around its center, with the supermassive black hole tens of thousands of light years away. At first glance, this is not the number we're looking for, but our galaxy consists of more than just in the visual stars. Its large spiral arms full of star and gas dust clusters revolve around the center a bit or slowly, and they make one revolution in exactly 200 million years. Scientists believe that once the solar system enters such a zone of increased galactic density, external gravitational perturbations knock some of the comets in the Oort cloud from their stable orbit and deflect them towards Earth at great speed. Scientists suggest that those powerful collisions could have split apart many supercontinents in Earth's history and accelerated their cycles. Such cataclysms in turn caused drastic climate changes with prolonged ice ages, not to mention sudden mass extinctions. Moreover, the sun's magnetic field can experience serious overloads when passing through the galaxy's dense regions, and as a result, plasma emissions can become more frequent. So, we seem to have finally found the missing link in Earth's catastrophic cycles. Australian geologists suggest that the last time we passed through the galactic arm was 66 million years ago. Does this mean we have over 130 million years until our encounter with the next killer comet? Unfortunately, the devil is in those exceptions to the comet cycle. Sometimes the impacts occurred during periods when the solar system was supposed to be far from dangerous dense areas. I can show you multiple breathtaking and detailed animations of the Milky Way, but in fact, astronomers aren't exactly sure how many arms it has or how they're arranged. We just can't see the half of the galaxy that's lying behind its bright core. In addition, those gravitational perturbations can also cause interstellar dark matter clusters, which are completely invisible to us. So who knows? Maybe right now killer comet is heading towards us from the Oort cloud, and if that's true, we'll need the entire world's nuclear arsenal to at least try to deflect it away from Earth. Break the most global and deadly cosmic cycle. But that will happen only if humanity manages to tackle the destructive cycles that govern it. In that video posted a year ago, I told you about the Austrian sociologist Arno Tausch, who published an astonishing scientific paper in 2007. He noticed all the major armed conflicts from late 15th century to present date fit into the UPS and world economy, such as the Great Depression a century ago. It gives the impression that nations have their own internal clocks that signal them to start a war every now and then. The most remarkable thing is that, according to after the Second World War, there was a prolonged decline in the cycle, which can only lead to a new peak. And this time, it should be very prominent. In just a couple of months after I expressed this idea in my video, Russia invaded Ukraine, and some experts believe this could be just a prologue to the Third World War. Now, do you believe in the secret cycles that are responsible for cataclysms on Earth, and if we manage to avoid human-made nuclear winter, which misfortune from the rest of the catastrophic menu do you think we'll be able to repel in? Which one will undoubtedly lead to a new global extinction?